Hi, I'm Mina.
And I'm Yules.
Thanks for tuning in to Artificially Informed.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're here to cut through the noise and make sense of, well, everything hitting our desks this week.
And it's quite the stack. We've got materials stretching from quantum physics and, believe it or not, how whales live for centuries, all the way to global politics heating up and some absolutely massive market shifts.
Our mission, as always, is to pull out the key insights, the connections you might miss. We've got some real aha moments lined up today.
Definitely. Like how thinking like a child might actually unlock your memories. It sounds wild, but there's science behind it.
And the sheer scale of some of these deals.
Yeah.
OpenAI and Amazon, we need to talk about that number. Plus, a bit closer to home, historically speaking, some serious worries about ancient structures in Rome.
So we're weaving together these threads of, let's say, biological resilience, how life finds ways to endure and remember against the backdrop of, well, the fragility of things humans build, both physically and politically.
It's a fascinating contrast. Okay, let's dive right in. We always start at the cutting edge, right? Science and space.
Exactly, the frontiers, where the really fundamental breakthroughs are happening, things that could change how we think about life itself, and maybe even how long we live.
Okay, I want to start with something that just sounds beautiful, almost. This idea about memory retrieval. Researchers found a way to boost childhood memory recall.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. The technique involves basically having people interact with a digital version of their own face, but like a child's version of their face.
So like an avatar of your younger self.
Exactly. And by sort of embodying that younger self digitally, it seems to significantly improve their ability to recall vivid memories from that time.
How does that even work? Is it just nostalgia?
Well, the thinking goes deeper. It ties into this concept called embodied cognition. The idea is that our thoughts, our memories, they're not just abstract things in our brain. They're linked to our physical bodies and how we perceive ourselves.
Right, so if you perceive yourself, even in this virtual way, as you were when you were, say, 5 years old.
It seems to rebuild the context, the sort of mental scaffolding for accessing memories from that period. It's like the visual cue of seeing your younger self unlocks pathways that were maybe harder to reach otherwise.
That is fascinating. It suggests memory isn't just like pulling up a file. It's tied to your sense of self right now.
Precisely. And the implications, well, they could be huge. Think about therapeutic uses. Memory recovery after trauma, maybe.
Or even for cognitive decline, like dementia. Could this be a way to help people reconnect with their past selves without drugs?
That's the hope. It points towards, using these kinds of tailored tech interventions, these digital self-representations as a potential tool alongside, or maybe even instead of, traditional therapies for certain conditions. It's early days, but it's a really exciting direction.
Truly remarkable. Okay, sticking with biology but shifting scale, way up. The bowhead whale. 200 years. How?
Yeah, 2 centuries or more. These Arctic giants are just longevity masters, and scientists think they've pinpointed a key protein. It's called CIRBP.
CIRBP, what does that stand for?
It's cold-inducible RNA binding protein. The cold-inducible part is the clue.
So the extreme cold of the Arctic actually helps them live longer. That seems counterintuitive.
It does, right. But it seems the stress of the cold and possibly other environmental factors like natural radiation triggers this protein, CRBP, to go into action.
What does it do?
It acts like a super protector for the whale's DNA. It helps stabilize it, repair damage, and basically prevents the kind of cellular wear and tear, the senescence, that leads to aging and cancer in most other mammals, including us.
So the environmental stressor activates a defense mechanism that promotes longevity. That's incredible.
It really is. And understanding exactly how CRBP does this, the biochemical pathways, well, that's the multi-million-dollar question, isn't it? If we could mimic that protective effect in humans.
It could revolutionize how we approach age-related diseases, maybe even extend healthy human lifespan significantly, without needing to take an Arctic swim, hopefully.
Let's hope not. But it shows how much we can learn from extreme life forms. Now, while we're talking about longevity and things people take, there's a bit of a cautionary note regarding melatonin.
Oh, really? So many people use that as a sleep aid. It's seen as pretty harmless, right? Over the counter?
Generally, yes, for short-term use. But a new study is raising some flags about long-term use, and they define long-term here as, like, consistent use for over a year.
Okay, what's the concern?
The study found a link between that kind of long-term use and an increased risk of heart failure and even mortality.
Wow. Okay, that's That's significant heart failure.
Yeah. Now, the experts involved are being careful. They're saying, don't panic if you take it occasionally. But it's a strong reminder that even natural supplements can have systemic effects, especially over long periods.
So the takeaway is really talk to your doctor, especially if you're using it regularly for months or years.
Exactly. It highlights the need for proper guidance on dosage and duration, even for things you can just buy off the shelf. It's not necessarily benign just because it's readily available.
That makes sense. And it contrasts nicely, actually, with another finding you mentioned earlier about something incredibly simple for health.
Right. The walking study. It turns out just getting in, what was it, 3,000 to 5,000 steps a day?
Which isn't that much, really, maybe a couple of miles.
Pretty achievable for many people. And doing just that was linked to slowing down the buildup of those toxic tau proteins we associate with Alzheimer's symptoms.
So simple movement. It's not just about your heart, it's actively protecting your brain. That's powerful.
It really is. Low barrier, accessible preventative medicine.
Yeah.
Sometimes the simplest things are incredibly effective.
Okay, before we leave the realm of fundamental science, there was a breakthrough in quantum physics, too. Something about entangled atoms.
Yeah, this is deep stuff, but really cool. It's about amplifying a phenomenon called superradiance.
Superradiance sounds like something from a comic book. What is it?
Yeah. Basically, it's when a group of atoms emits light collectively all at once in a big, intense burst rather than individually.
Okay, like a synchronized flash mob of atoms.
Kind of. And what researchers found is that if you use quantum entanglement, where atoms are linked, their fates intertwine, you can make this collective emission much, much stronger and faster.
Because the entanglement forces them to act like one single giant emitter.
Exactly. They become highly coherent. Instead of a messy bunch of individual flashes, you get one powerful, coordinated pulse.
And the applications for that?
Well, it's fundamental. It
Yeah.
could lead to designing things like quantum batteries that charge incredibly fast, much more sensitive sensors, maybe even new types of secure communication. It's about optimizing energy release at the most basic atomic level.
Mind-bending stuff.
Yeah.
All right, let's zoom out from the quantum realm to our solar system. Venus, Earth's evil twin. Still getting a lot of attention.
Absolutely. There's a renewed push to understand Venus. We've got, I think, 5 missions proposed for the next decade or so. NASA, that's the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, has Veritas planned, and the European Space Agency, ESA, has Envision.
Why Venus? What's the big draw?
It's the ultimate cautionary tale, isn't it? A planet roughly Earth-size that might have been habitable once, but suffered a runaway greenhouse effect. It's now, 900 degrees Fahrenheit on the surface?
A hellscape, basically.
Totally.
Yeah.
So understanding its geology, its atmosphere, how it got that way, that's crucial for refining our own climate models here on Earth. We need to know how planetary climate systems can tip over the edge.
But these missions, they face hurdles. Funding is always an issue.
Always the challenge with big space projects. So while they're targeting the next decade, it wouldn't be surprising if some launches slip into the 2030s. Space exploration requires patience, even when the science feels urgent.
Okay, so Venus might take a while. But for people wanting some cosmic action right now.
Look up. The Southern Taurid meteor shower is peaking right around now, November 4th and 5th.
Ah, the Taurids. Not known for quantity, but quality, right?
Exactly. You might not see a ton of meteors per hour, but the ones you do see are often incredibly bright. They're famous for producing fireballs, definitely worth trying to catch if you have clear skies.
Nice. And speaking of looking up, there was a note about telescopes.
Yeah, timely mention. Unistellar, they make those smart telescopes, are apparently offering a 20% Black Friday discount. It just highlights how much more accessible serious stargazing is becoming for, regular folks.
Good to know. And one last quick space note. That interstellar object, 3I-80 Pharaoh, still being weird.
Still being weird. Reports say it's changed color again, and it's still showing signs of accelerating in ways we can't fully explain just by gravity.
So not behaving like a simple comet or asteroid.
Doesn't seem like it. It's one of those little cosmic mysteries that reminds us there's still plenty we don't understand out there.
Always humbling. Okay, let's bring it back down to Earth, but into the digital realm. Power, security, intellectual property. Big stuff happening there, too.
Huge stuff. We're talking about the infrastructure of the modern world, the digital grid. And the scale is just astronomical.
Let's start with the biggest number I saw this week. $38 billion. OpenAI and Amazon, what is that deal?
It's a massive 7-year cloud computing agreement. OpenAI, the makers of ChatGPT, are basically committing to using Amazon Web Services, or AWS, for their heavy-duty computing needs.
And that includes access to tons of those powerful NVIDIA GPUs, the graphics processing units, that are essential for training these huge AI models.
Exactly. $38 billion, that's just an almost unprecedented amount for a cloud deal. It signals Amazon going all in to make AWS the undisputed backbone for the AI revolution.
Puts a lot of pressure on their rivals, I imagine. Microsoft, Google.
Huge pressure. Microsoft, of course, is heavily invested in OpenAI themselves, so that's an interesting dynamic. But this deal solidifies Amazon's position as a primary infrastructure provider. The market liked it, too. Amazon's stock got a nice bump.
But there was a really important catch, right? Something about the data they can't use.
Crucial point. The sources were very clear on this. The deal does not give OpenAI the right to train its AI models on data that other companies host on AWS.
So they can't just scrape data from, say, the New York Times or Reddit servers just because they're hosted on Amazon's cloud.
Nope, that's explicitly excluded. And it speaks volumes about the massive legal battles brewing over AI training data and intellectual property. AI companies need data, tons of it, but they're now having to be incredibly careful about where they get it and what they're allowed to use legally.
It's a tightrope walk. They need the scale AWS provides, but without violating copyright and privacy by slurping up customer data hosted there.
Absolutely. It's not just a business deal. It's navigating a legal minefield. And this enormous compute power, this AI boom, it leads directly to another major concern: the environmental cost.
The energy footprint. Both Sam Altman from OpenAI and Satya Nadella from Microsoft have been talking about this, haven't they?
They have, and the numbers are frankly alarming. Altman estimated that AI's growth could potentially double the energy consumption of data centers worldwide by 2026.
Double. That's staggering. These data centers are already energy hogs.
Exactly. They are packed with power-hungry GPUs running 24/7. This AI explosion is creating a demand for electricity that's straining grids and raising huge questions about sustainability.
So what's the answer? Nadella had some thoughts on that.
Yeah, he stressed that the value of AI has to be measured not just by what it can do, but by its efficiency and real-world benefits. He basically called for a major push beyond just building more data centers, urging massive investment in alternative energy sources like fusion or enhanced geothermal to power this revolution cleanly.
So the tech leaders themselves are acknowledging this is a potential crisis in the making if we don't figure out the power problem.
They have to. The growth trajectory is unsustainable otherwise. It connects back to that theme of fragility. Our digital world rests on a physical energy infrastructure that's now under unprecedented strain.
Okay, speaking of strain and potential fragility, let's talk cybersecurity. There was a worrying issue with police surveillance cameras.
Yeah, this involved a company called Flock Safety. They provide camera systems used by lots of police departments. And some lawmakers, notably Senator Ron Wyden, raised a big red flag.
What was the vulnerability?
It sounds almost basic, but it's critical. Sources indicated that almost 3% of the law enforcement agencies using these Flock cameras weren't using multi-factor authentication, MFA, on their accounts.
Wow. Just basic password protection. No second factor for police surveillance systems.
Pretty much. MFA is Security 101 these days, where you need a password plus a code from your phone or an app. Not having that leaves these systems wide open to relatively simple hacking techniques, like phishing or guessing passwords.
And the risk is someone could gain access to live feeds, stored footage, the whole network.
That's the fear. Senator Wyden called for the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, to investigate immediately. It's a major public safety concern. And groups like the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, who already have privacy concerns about this kind of surveillance, are now pointing out the security risks too. If the system itself isn't secure, the potential for misuse is enormous.
Yeah, that's deeply concerning. And the cybersecurity drama didn't end there. There was an indictment involving ransomware negotiators.
This one is really disturbing. The Department of Justice, the DOJ, charged some former U.S. ransomware negotiators. These are people companies hire to help them after they get hit by ransomware.
Okay, so they help negotiate with the hackers, try to get data back.
Right, but these individuals are accused of basically playing both sides. They allegedly worked with, or facilitated payments for, the notorious ALPHV Black Hat ransomware group, the very criminals they were supposed to be protecting companies from.
Wait, so they were helping the hackers they were hired to fight?
That's the allegation. a massive conflict of interest, possibly corruption. It suggests a really dark side to the whole ransomware response industry, where the lines blurred between helping victims and enabling the criminals. It really shakes trust in that whole ecosystem.
That's incredibly cynical, if true.
Ah.
Wow. Okay, and staying with conflicts, but moving to intellectual property again. AI versus artists. This time, Japan.
Yes, we're seeing major Japanese publishers stepping up. This includes big names like Bandai Namco and even the legendary animation house Studio Ghibli.
Studio Ghibli. Wow. What's their complaint?
They're demanding that OpenAI stop using their copyrighted works, their films, their characters, their distinctive art style to train AI models like DALL-E or Sora.
Because the AI is generating images or video that look too much like Ghibli's unique style.
Exactly. It mimics their aesthetic, potentially creating derivative works that blur the line of authorship. And this hits a really tricky legal point, especially in the US, where copyright law generally only protects works created by humans.
Ah, so if an AI creates something that looks like a Miyazaki film, but no human directly drew it, who owns it? Can Ghibli claim infringement?
That's the billion-dollar question courts are grappling with worldwide. Can an AI infringe copyright if it's not legally considered an author? How do you protect a unique artistic style from being replicated algorithmically? This fight is far from over and will shape the future for creators everywhere.
It's the essence of creativity versus computation, a huge battleground.
Everywhere.
Okay, let's shift gears dramatically now into the realm of geopolitics and some pretty intense domestic political situations, starting in the U.S. with the government shutdown, still ongoing.
Still ongoing and getting close to being one of the longest on record. The core dispute seems to remain centered on funding levels and specifically disagreements over provisions related to the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare.
And the political lines are still drawn pretty hard.
Very much so. According to reports, President Trump has maintained his stance that the shutdown won't end until Democrats agree to his specific demands on policy points. This effectively places the responsibility for reopening the government and restoring services onto the opposing party's willingness to concede.
And this isn't just abstract political maneuvering. There are real-world consequences hitting people now, right? Something about SNAP benefits.
Yes, and this is probably the most immediate and controversial impact. The administration announced that for November, recipients of SNAP, that's the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, formerly known as food stamps, will only receive half their usual benefits.
Half. Wow. That affects millions of people, low-income families relying on that for groceries.
Millions. It caused an immediate public outcry. Critics are framing it as using essential food aid as leverage in a political fight. The administration also stated that full payments would only resume after the shutdown ends, directly linking basic support to the political resolution. It's putting immense pressure on vulnerable populations.
That's a tough situation. Okay, moving from D.C. to New York City, a heated mayoral race there.
Very heated. You've got Zohran Mamdani, a progressive Democrat who's apparently leading in the polls, versus Andrew Cuomo running as an independent.
And Mamdani's platform is quite ambitious. Universal child care, rent freezes.
Yeah, very progressive. Funded, he proposes, by significantly higher taxes on the city's wealthiest residents and corporations. And this platform has drawn attention from the highest level.
How so?
President Trump weighed in directly. He publicly endorsed Cuomo, the independent candidate, and went further, threatening to limit federal funding to New York City if Mamdani, the progressive Democrat, wins.
Threatening to cut federal funds based on a local election outcome.
That's how it's being interpreted. Citing concerns over Mamdani's proposed policies, the message was that a win for him could jeopardize the city's relationship with and funding from the federal government. It injects a major dose of national politics into a local race.
And how are New Yorkers reacting?
Voter engagement seems sky high. Reports mention record numbers for early voting, suggesting people see this election as incredibly consequential, maybe precisely because of this national spotlight and the stakes involved.
Okay, let's broaden the view globally. Tensions between the U.S. and Nigeria. What's happening there?
There was a clash following President Trump's threat of potential military action against Nigeria. The stated reason was alleged persecution of Christians within the country.
Military action. That's a strong statement. How did Nigeria respond?
With a very strong rejection. Nigerian officials, including a presidential advisor named Daniel Bwala, pushed back hard. They denied claims of systemic religious genocide.
So what do they say is causing the violence?
They largely attribute it to long-standing localized conflicts over resources, land, and water disputes between farming communities and nomadic herders, which unfortunately sometimes fall along religious or ethnic lines, but aren't state-sponsored persecution, according to them.
And they definitely don't want U.S. troops involved.
Absolutely not. They were very clear about rejecting any idea of American boots on the ground, stressing Nigerian sovereignty. They indicated they'd prefer support like equipment or intelligence sharing to help them manage the situation, not direct intervention.
Got it. Okay, shifting focus to the Russia-Ukraine conflict. What's
Yeah.
the latest dynamic there, particularly regarding U.S. policy?
President Trump seems to be maintaining a cautious stance on escalating offensive aid. There were reports of reluctance to send advanced Tomahawk cruise missiles to Ukraine.
What's the reasoning behind that?
The reported thinking is that the conflict should be allowed to play out, perhaps until both sides are more exhausted and genuinely ready to negotiate a peace deal, rather than providing weapons that could significantly expand the conflict scope right now.
But despite that caution on certain weapon systems, the conflict is expanding in reach, isn't it?
It seems so. Ukraine demonstrated a significant capability recently. They apparently launched long-range drone attacks that successfully hit an industrial facility deep inside Russia, something like 1,300 kilometers from the border, in the Sverdlovsk region.
1,300 kilometers. That's a huge distance.
It really is. It shows Ukraine's growing ability to strike strategically important targets far behind the front lines, which changes the risk calculation for Russia significantly.
Okay, and finally in this segment, the Middle East. Some developments in Israel and with Saudi Arabia.
Yes. First, in Israel, a major controversy has erupted involving a former top military lawyer, Yifat Tomer Yerushalmi.
What happened?
She was arrested after admitting to leaking a video, and the video allegedly showed Israeli soldiers sexually assaulting a Palestinian detainee.
Oh, wow. That's incredibly serious.
Extremely. The leak has sparked outrage both domestically and internationally, intensifying scrutiny on the military's conduct, prisoner treatment protocols, and the broader issues of accountability and human rights within the occupied territories. It's put the government under immense pressure.
A major internal scandal. And on the diplomatic front, Saudi Arabia.
Right. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, often known as MBS, is scheduled for a high-profile visit with President Trump around November 18th.
What's the main agenda item?
A big one. The potential normalization of relations between Saudi Arabia and Israel. This has been a major foreign policy goal for the Trump administration.
But there's a condition attached, isn't there? Something about the Palestinians.
That seems to be the key linkage. Reports suggest that President Trump is tying progress on Saudi-Israel normalization directly to tangible steps toward the establishment of a Palestinian state.
So normalization isn't just a standalone deal anymore. It has to include progress on the Palestinian issue.
That appears to be the framework being discussed. It makes the whole equation much more complex, weaving together regional security with the long-standing Palestinian question. It's not just about Riyadh and Jerusalem anymore. Ramallah has to be part of the conversation for this deal to potentially move forward.
A very intricate diplomatic dance. Okay, so let's move on. We need to talk about history, infrastructure, and the environment. This is where that theme of fragility really comes into focus.
It really does. And tragically, we start in Rome, Italy, with the collapse of a historic structure, the Torre dei Conti.
That's a medieval tower, right? Near the ancient Roman Forum.
Exactly, a landmark. And it partially collapsed. The worst part is that during the rescue efforts, one worker who was trapped sadly died.
How awful. What caused the collapse? Do they know?
It's under investigation now. Authorities opened a manslaughter inquiry. But beyond the immediate cause, this event has sent shockwaves through the city and the preservation community. It starkly highlights worries about the structural integrity of Rome's incredible but aging historical architecture.
You've got these ancient and medieval structures sitting right in the middle of a bustling modern city. The vibrations, pollution, maybe maintenance issues.
All of it plays a role. How do you preserve structures that are centuries, even millennia old, while accommodating modern life? And this isn't just about aesthetics, it's about safety. This collapse raises serious questions about whether enough is being done to monitor and maintain these irreplaceable buildings.
It's a profound challenge. These buildings survive so much history, only to face threats from, well, us.
And potentially from climate change, too. Extreme weather, changes in groundwater levels, these can destabilize foundations. So preserving history is now intertwined with adapting to environmental shifts.
A heavy thought. Okay, shifting from a structure that fell to one that was rediscovered. archaeology in the U.S.
Yeah, a really neat find in colonial Williamsburg, Virginia. Archaeologists uncovered remnants of Revolutionary War barracks used by some of America's very first soldiers.
Barracks from the 1770s and 80s. What do they find?
Things like musket balls, buttons, buckles, pottery fragments, the everyday items used by soldiers between 1776 and 1783. It gives this incredibly tangible glimpse into their daily lives during the War for Independence.
And this discovery changes the story a bit, right?
It does. The previous belief, based on historical accounts, was that the British under General Cornwallis had completely destroyed this site when they occupied Williamsburg in 1781.
But clearly they didn't fully succeed.
Nope. Enough remained hidden underground for archaeologists to find now. History literally resurfacing. It shows that attempts to erase the past aren't always successful.
That's pretty cool. And another historical artifact surfaced related to a famous plot in Britain.
Yeah, a bit of historical intrigue. A ring believed to have belonged to Robert Catesby is going up for auction.
Catesby, leader of the Gunpowder Plot, 1605, trying to blow up Parliament.
That's the one. So this ring is potentially a direct physical link to one of the most infamous moments in British history. Kind of sends a shiver down your spine thinking about who might have worn it.
Definitely. Okay, turning now to current environmental crises and natural disasters. It's been a rough week in some parts of the world.
Very rough. Typhoon Kalmegi hit the Philippines hard, especially Cebu Island.
What was the impact?
Severe flooding. Tragically, at least 3 deaths reported. The reports describe floodwaters powerful enough to wash away cars and even large shipping containers. Just devastating infrastructure damage and loss of life.
Yeah, the Caribbean is also reeling.
Yes. From Hurricane Melissa, which was a Category 5 storm, it affected a huge number of people, nearly 6 million across Haiti, Cuba, and Jamaica. The scale of the humanitarian need is immense.
6 million people impacted.
Yeah.
That's massive. What's being done?
The World Food Program, the WFP, has launched an emergency appeal. They're seeking about $74 million to provide critical aid, food, water, shelter, especially to the hardest hit and most remote communities where access is difficult.
It highlights the vulnerability of island nations to these increasingly powerful storms.
Absolutely. And while these hurricanes grab headlines, there's another quieter crisis the UN wanted to highlight: land degradation.
Land degradation, what does that involve?
It's basically the decline in the quality of land, soil erosion, loss of vegetation, desertification, often caused by unsustainable farming practices, deforestation, climate change. The UN's Food and Agriculture Organization, the FAO, called it a silent crisis.
How many people does it affect?
Get this, 1.7 billion people globally. It's a massive driver of poverty, food insecurity, and migration.
Wow. 1.7 billion, that's staggering. Is there anything that could be done?
The FAO stressed that solutions exist. They calculated that restoring just 10% of degraded croplands worldwide could feed an additional 154 million people every year.
So investing in land restoration isn't just environmentalism, it's crucial for global food security and livelihoods.
Exactly. It's about fixing the foundation of our food systems.
Okay, let's move into our final segment. Markets, corporate power, and some interesting social trends, starting with a huge corporate merger.
Right, in the consumer goods sector, Kimberly-Clark, the company behind Huggies and Kleenex, is acquiring Kenvue.
Kenvue. They own brands like Tylenol, Band-Aid, Listerine, right? Spun off from Johnson & Johnson.
That's them. It's a massive deal, around $40 billion, putting Kenvue's total valuation near $49 billion.
So Kimberly-Clark is significantly expanding its footprint, moving more heavily into consumer health alongside its paper products.
It looks like a strategic consolidation, bringing these huge everyday brands under one roof, likely aiming for efficiencies and greater market power, especially in a somewhat volatile economic climate.
Speaking of volatility, how have the markets been behaving?
A bit shaky. We saw some significant downturns. The Dow Jones Industrial Average dropped about 400 points at one point. The NASDAQ and S&P 500 also fell.
What was driving the pessimism?
A lot of it seemed tied to the tech sector again. There are ongoing worries about frothy valuations, basically. Fears that tech stock prices have gotten too high, maybe disconnected from their actual earnings or future prospects. This nervousness spilled over a bit too, even saw a spike in liquidations in the crypto market.
So a general sense of caution creeping in.
Seems like it. And related to the broader economy, there was a G20 report that highlighted growing inequality. It specifically mentioned India, noting that the top 1% there have seen their wealth absolutely soar since the year 2000.
Underscoring that global trend where economic growth isn't necessarily lifting all boats equally.
Right. Wealth concentration at the very top remains a major global issue.
Now, Shifting to corporate ethics, a major trial is underway in Paris, involving the company Lafarge.
Yes, this is a landmark case. Lafarge, the giant French cement company, is on trial facing incredibly serious charges. Financing terrorism.
Financing terrorism, how?
The allegations center on their operations in Syria between 2011 and 2014 during the Civil War. Prosecutors claim Lafarge paid significant amounts of money, possibly hundreds of thousands of euros, to various armed groups, including ISIS affiliates.
Why would they do that?
Allegedly, to keep their cement factory running, to secure safe passage for employees and materials, essentially to continue doing business amidst the chaos, even if it meant paying off extremist groups.
Wow, that raises fundamental questions about corporate responsibility in conflict zones.
Absolutely. Can a company legally or ethically pay armed groups, even designated terrorist organizations, to maintain operations? What are the obligations of multinational corporations in unstable regions? This trial could set a major precedent.
A huge case to watch. Okay, another area of tension between development and environment, the Amazon River in Brazil.
Right. There's significant controversy over a proposed $130 million project. The goal is to dredge and deepen the main channel of the Amazon River.
Why deepen it? For bigger ships.
Primarily, yes. To facilitate navigation for larger commercial vessels, boosting trade. But it's facing strong opposition from communities living along the riverbanks who fear the dredging will destroy fish habitats and disrupt the natural cycles they rely on for food and their livelihoods, and also from environmental groups.
What are the environmental concerns?
They warn that the dredging, which can involve underwater blasting, could devastate critical habitats for endangered species, like the Amazon River dolphin, the bodo, and various species of river turtles unique to the region.
So it's a classic clash. Economic development versus environmental protection and indigenous rights.
A very stark one, in one of the most ecologically sensitive places on Earth. The Brazilian Environmental Agency says they'll monitor the impacts, but skepticism is high among opponents.
A difficult balance. Okay, let's look at a couple of social and cultural shifts.
Yeah.
Something notable happened in the UK regarding smoking and vaping.
Yeah, a significant milestone, statistically speaking. For the first time, the estimated number of adults in Great Britain who vape, around 5.4 million, has surpassed the number who smoke traditional cigarettes, which is now down to about 4.9 million.
So vapers now outnumber smokers.
Officially, yes, according to these figures. It marks a major shift in public health habits, confirming the massive rise of vaping, whether as a replacement for smoking or as a habit in its own right. The debate about its long-term health effects continues, of course, but its prevalence is undeniable now.
Interesting. And another sign of the times, TikTok's growing influence.
Right. They held their first ever U.S. TikTok Creator Awards. Which might sound trivial, but it symbolizes how platforms like TikTok have evolved from just being social media apps.
Into major entertainment and cultural forces.
Exactly. They're shaping trends, launching careers, becoming huge economic engines in the creator economy. These awards are like their version of the Emmys or Grammys, cementing their status as a dominant force in media.
A sign of how quickly the media landscape changes. Lastly today, we need to acknowledge an act of real bravery.
Yes, absolutely. We need to honor Samir Zatouni, a rail worker in the UK.
What did he do?
He intervened during a mass stabbing incident that occurred on a train in Cambridgeshire. Reports say his quick thinking and courageous actions saved lives during a terrifying situation.
Just an ordinary person stepping up in an extraordinary moment.
Exactly. Hailed as a hero by his family and the public. His bravery also prompted the UK's Transport Secretary to announce a review of rail security, looking into things like better CCTV coverage, maybe even facial recognition tech, to try and prevent similar incidents.
A reminder of both the risks we face and the capacity for heroism.
Well said. And that, I think, brings us toward the end of this deep dive.
It really covered a lot of ground, didn't it? From the secrets of long-lived whales in the Arctic right down to the political deadlock in Washington, D.C. and its impact on food aid.
We went from quantum entanglement to corporate trials, from ancient Rome to the Amazon rainforest.
And the goal, as always, for you listening, is to find the connections, to navigate this complexity. We saw this incredible drive in nature, like with the bowhead whale's CIRBP protein, pushing the boundaries of life, striving for resilience over centuries.
But then we immediately contrasted that with the sudden, shocking fragility of human endeavors. The Torre dei Conti in Rome, a structure that stood for ages, suddenly crumbling. Or the massive energy demands of AI, straining the very power grids our modern society depends on.
which really sets up our final thought for you today. It's something to chew on. As we push the frontiers of biology, trying to extend life, enhance memory, overcome disease, and as our technology reaches these incredible, almost science fiction levels of capability demanding more and more resources.
Are we paying enough attention to the foundations, the physical infrastructure, the environmental stability, even the societal structures that need to support all this progress? We're reaching for the stars, biologically and technologically.
But are we making sure the ground beneath our feet, both the ancient stones of our history and the modern concrete of our infrastructure, is strong enough to hold us? Can it keep pace with the life we're trying to build and sustain?
Something to think about. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
We'll be back next time to unpack another stack of global developments. See you then.
Enjoying Artificially Informed.
Hit subscribe and share it with a friend.
From the left, the right, and straight from the algorithm.
Thank you.
That's it for today's Artificially Informed.
Nope. Thanks for spending your time with us.
Yeah.
Stay sharp, stay curious. See you next time.